There's been a lot of talk about history over the last few days. And 1856 was the last time it took longer than the votes we're having right now to find a Speaker of the House. 133 over 2 months. Without question, the issues divide us today are much less severe than they were in 1856. In fact, there's far more that unite us than divide us, regardless of our political party or our ideology. The issues today are over a few rules and personalities, while the issues at that time were about slavery and whether the value of a man who looks like me was 60% or 100% of a human being. It was a long, drawn-out, painful process, but it needed to happen. And in the end, Nathaniel Banks won by the slimmest of margins. But you know, margins don't matter when your policies are on the right side of history. On that day, long ago, the good guys won. On that day, long ago, the abolitionists won. On that day, the people who believe in freedom and self-determination won. I'm a freshman. I've only been here for a couple days, but I've heard a lot of D.C. politicians tell me about how broken D.C. is. I don't need D.C. politicians to tell me how broken D.C. is. The American people have already told us how broken D.C. is by giving Republicans the majority so we can fix this mess. We will counter the socialist movement of envy and confiscation with a conservative movement of access and opportunity. We will stand on the right side of history again. We will end the growth of government, and we will stop 87,000 new IRS agents from picking through your pocketbooks. We will secure our energy independence. We will ban the sale of petroleum from our strategic reserves to China. We'll establish a bipartisan select committee specifically to keep our eye on the ball in China. We'll address the crisis at the border that's killing Americans by the day and improve both our safety and our nation and our dignity for those who come here in search of a better life. But not yet. We're still stuck at the starting block. The American people have told us by putting a Republican majority here that they want Republicans to lead and they want a government that works and doesn't embarrass them. And we are failing on both missions. That must change today. It will change. Benjamin Franklin said, "We must hang together or must assuredly hang separate." We're stuck in a malaise, at an impasse, and we will stay here. We will not be able to fight the real conservative fights until we find a way to come together and fight that mission together. Yesterday, we experienced very briefly our first win. It's a small victory. It's a small victory. It was a small victory, but didn't it feel good? We've been working hard for that victory, and there's much more to come. As a cadet at West Point, I learned the phrase, and it's always been my motto throughout life: mission first, people always. And right now, the people are left out. Right now, they don't have a Congress to speak for them at the highest level of government. Right now, every individual in this room can concede that the rounds that we've taken is not what we told our constituents we'd do.
That was Michigan Republican John James giving an impassioned speech for Jim Jordan for Speaker this past week. Isn't that right? Wait, what? No, that was January 5th. That was the speech for Kevin McCarthy. Gosh, he had so much incredible rhetoric about the need to unify and to get a win. I mean, that was actually not even half of his speech. The whole rest of it was like, we need to win. Kevin McCarthy's going to win. Let's unify. We got to unify. The American people need us to get going on this. But apparently John James is a big fat lying hypocrite, because he was the only member of the Michigan delegation who voted no on Jim Jordan, the man who might have actually done all of those things that he was talking about in that speech back in January.
So back last year, though, they all voted for McCarthy. We didn't have anyone that went for that was with Gates when they got rid of or when they had the 20 rounds of voting or whatever, did we?
There, if I recall correctly, Gates and the others announced their holdout once Kevin McCarthy started rolling back some of the things he was promising them. And January 1st or 3rd came around and they had to start voting, and Gates and the others voted no. And
Yeah.
that was, I believe, the fourth round of voting when John James gave that nominating speech. Now, interestingly, in the first round of voting this past week for Jim Jordan, John James voted for Tom Cole. And then the very next day, when they had their second round of voting, Tom Cole gave the nominating speech for none other than Jim Jordan. So who did John James vote for that second day? Well, you wouldn't want the embarrassment of having the very man that you voted for the day before nominate Jim Jordan the very next day, would you? So you best thing to do is pick someone that's not even a House representative. So he voted for
Lee Zeldin.
No, Candace Miller. Lee Zeldin is actually someone that got some things accomplished. He actually got a lot of Republicans elected in New York. No, Candace Miller's a total Neocon. No, but Candace Miller used to be the representative from that, more or less that same district back in the day. Yeah. So welcome everybody to the Rescue Michigan live stream. It's the Neocons strike back. We've got a few to talk about, starting of course with John James. We've got some others to go over too, including in Lansing this week. We learned, well, we didn't entirely learn, but I must say I'm amazed. I'm amazed to see 6 Republicans, all of whom are in tough districts, introducing gun ban legislation in the House. So we'll talk about that when the moment gets there.
Shameful.
Daniel Acacia says, yeah, the government is splintered. So is the Michigan 10th. Good. It should be. And we're going to talk about that. On Rumble, I'm looking up, and whenever I'm looking up in a way like this, guys, if you don't know, I've got multiple screens and I got to keep Rumble on another screen to look at so I can read the Rumble chats. Carla Cosmic says, James the talking head do nothing clown. Yes, I fully concur. In fact, I have no idea, Patty. Maybe you know. That small victory they were talking about before the day before. I don't know. Does anybody know? Does anybody remember?
I have no idea.
I heard some guy in the background when he said, it was a small victory. And then some guy behind him was like, it was a big victory. And whatever it was.
You're a bunch of tools.
Yeah, we have no memory of whatever victory that might have been. Mark says, John James is a sellout, used MAGA conservative to get elected and stabbed us in the back. When have we ever heard that before? What a traitor. I and so many called John James' office and said for him to vote for Jordan on our behalf. Yeah, I know. We did an email blast. A lot of you guys answered the calls, and his constituents should not be happy with him. And in fact, this coming Wednesday, I was talking to our good friend Shane Trejo and a couple others, and they said, you know what? Yeah, let's do a demonstration. And ordinarily, I am not a fan of political demonstrations. I have talked about them before. They tend to be a lot of work. They tend to be risky, and they tend to be not all that impactful because at the end of the day, especially when you're going to like Washington or Lansing, the amount of time it takes to get out to a place, I mean, it's a lot of time that could be spent knocking on doors, mobilizing voters, things of that nature. But there have been exceptions. Like one big exception was that Operation Gridlock rally we had in Lansing a few years ago, when the impression of those people coming to Lansing, when we were all told we would be labeled disease-spreading killers for doing so. But the impression that it made, especially when people had been isolated for month after month after month, that it woke people up. It knocked sense into them. And sometimes a rally can have that effect. And I think in this case, and it's important to keep in mind, all the things Congress does, they do a lot of garbage all day, every day. I cover what goes on in Lansing all the time. Some people may know I also write for Ron Paul's Campaign for Liberty, and I'm doing congressional stuff there all the time. But this is the very thing that John James himself said was so critical, because we can't do anything until we get a speaker. And with that, and Jim Jordan was the obvious unity candidate. But because of John James, this could go on for a very long time yet. And, I'm always one to say, what, the longer Congress can't do anything, the better. But what's going to happen over the next weeks and weeks is there's going to be some other rhino. Maybe it'll be what's his face, Patrick McHenry. Maybe Tom Emmer, good on fiscal policy sometimes, but bad on other things. And Matt Gaetz and the others might say no again. And
Right.
what's going to happen?
There's going to be, the holdouts on one side, and then, these guys had more than the holdouts on Gaetz's side, right? They had 20, and it was increasing actually, right? Jordan was losing votes.
Yeah, I think it started out with 20 and then went to 25.
25, yeah.
But nevertheless, I mean, as John James said, it doesn't matter how slim your majority is, whether you have it or not.
So Byron Donalds was with Gaetz in the original holdouts, but then he didn't.
Yeah, so that was
but he didn't want to get rid of McCarthy here. He didn't vote for him here at this time.
No, but neither did Jim Jordan. He didn't vote to get rid of McCarthy. He voted for McCarthy. He nominated McCarthy, in fact, in January. But what that is them not wanting to be the incendiary bomb throwers and wanting to say, I can work with people. I mean, yeah, Byron Donalds, by all appearances, is a hardcore Trumpster, although he's only been in office he's in his second term now, so he's been in office almost 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how truly tested he is, we don't really know. But fundamentally, I mean, the Washington establishment might have the same problem with Byron Donalds that they had with Jim Jordan. In fact, if he has the inclinations that Jim Jordan has, they will have the same problem with him. So, like on the third day,
we can call him racist. We call him racist.
Wait, who's a racist?
Well, we can call them racist if they don't vote for him. Right? We can use the leftist tactics.
I am not a big fan of using leftist tactics. In fact, I want to talk about that tonight too, because that's been a major thing.
Joke, Adam.
I know, but I know. I worry that not every person in our audience will get every joke either, though. So I always want to include those disclaimers,
Okay.
Anyhow. So let me put on the screen the information for this event. I hope you guys come out to this because it is important to let people know. And sorry, I could try to make this bigger image. You know what I'll do? I'll go to the full screen preview. It's not easy for me to do images in my screen here, but let's see if I can make that bigger. No, that didn't work. Nope, that screwed it up completely. All right. Let me try one more thing. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So here's the event this coming Wednesday, 3 to 5 p.m. at his district office in Warren. Apparently there's been some confusion because there's some National Republican Campaign Committee has an office in Sterling Heights on Van Dyke. It's not that. This is his district office. It's a big office building, wave signs, make a little noise maybe. It's an office building, so it'll be like on the street side. Maybe we'll try to go in, not what the security situation is in the building. You would think a member of Congress would have a public-facing district office. When I worked for Kerry Bentivolio, his district office was in a strip mall, and if you wanted to go visit him, you just drove in and walked right in. But I don't know. I don't know if it works that way for John James's office. But either way, the important thing is to make sure we're seeing news release, I think, in the works if it hasn't gone out already about this. And the more, the better, because, John James he's in a tough seat. He won that seat by less than half of a percentage point. And you would think he, of all people,
with all that name recognition, right? In Macomb County, that's bad.
Yeah. And it was a seat that when people looked at the district, they're like, this looks like a Republican district, like one that would be able to hold.
Yeah.
And
but to your point, though, I mean, think about the opportunity cost of going here and waving a sign versus that's 2 hours at the event. Depending on where you live, 2 hours driving, maybe.
Well, I know you're in the heat of a big election, and I would not encourage people who are going to be involved
if you're in Wayne 6, I would
if you've got things going on locally, I know there are some important races, and if you guys are involved in any campaigns for local office, and you're doing absentee chase or what have you for the next election, I'm not encouraging you to distract from that mission to go out to demonstrate. But what I would say is that as demonstrations go, this is a big thing. Mm-hmm. This is the direction of the U.S. House of Representatives, and for the first time, we had an opportunity to elect an actual conservative with a serious record. I mean, Jim Jordan's been in office for well over a decade, and he has a proven record of being one of us. And we're not going to get another guy like him.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, by the way,
but then they did that secret vote, and like 100 of them voted.
Yeah. So to Mark Kerniel's question, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. Didn't the election process for McCarthy to be speaker take 13 rounds? I believe 15 actually. And if so, why did Jordan stop after just a few rounds? Because they had the secret vote. I'm sorry, Patty, you were explaining this. But they had the secret vote in the caucus to
Well,
not
what prompted
support
that
McCarthy.
vote though? I just all of a sudden I saw the tweet about it. I'm like, what's this now? And they just like, let's get together and vote him off the island, you know, whatever.
Yeah. When lawmakers get together in caucus, or I guess in the U.S. House they call it the conference, they can have these private off the record votes. And typically in Lansing, when they have caucus meetings, they have, you know, a whip count on a bill, which is where if you're going to vote no on something, you let the whip know so they know how many no votes there's going to be, and then the leadership will say, okay, we got the votes to pass it. Let's vote to pass it anyway, something like that. But the reality is, they will vote very differently when they are in private off the record than they will when they are voting on the record, because they all know that the American people are going to be pissed off. A, for, you know, keeping the House out of business, and B, because people supported Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
So
well, just think here how when people started snapping pictures of the immediate effect vote, right? How it kind of
exactly
put a little fire under their ass. Yeah.
You had people that voted one way in public and another way in private. In public when it didn't matter, and in private when it did. Now, that does not necessarily mean Jim Jordan is not going to continue to try to run for speaker, but I mean, it's a huge setback. It really is. What's going to happen next?
Can he still do it even though they did that vote?
Well, the question is, what happens if? I mean, they can always undo, because it's totally informal. It's all internal. There's no binding effect on any of this. So the question is, what's going to happen if they nominate another rhino? And because maybe Matt Gaetz and the others will vote no on them too, and the clock's going to tick and tick and tick. And then in mid-November, if they don't yet have a speaker and they don't yet have a budget passed, there comes a shutdown. And now all of a sudden there's going to be a whole lot more pressure on the Republicans to either unify or, and here's the danger, cut some kind of deal with the Democrats to elect a total rhino speaker, or have a split House where the Republicans would share leadership with Nancy Pelosi or something, which is going to be an absolute, complete, and utter shit show. And they're not going to know what to do. This could drag on for a long time. So this is why I think even though Jim Jordan is now no longer officially in the running, it's still important to make a visual demonstration of how many voters are absolutely furious at the holdouts. And in Michigan, there's only one that we know of, and that is John James. Although, as I did mention in the email, it's apparently become known that Jack Bergman wants to run for speaker. He says, I'll be the interim speaker, which I don't know if there's anybody in Washington gullible enough to believe that one. Well, that's what they tried.
I would think once you get in there, you'd be like clutching to it. I don't know.
Oh yeah. They tried this last week too. They were like, hey, well, you know what? We'll make a deal, and we'll make Patrick McHenry totally Wall Street.
Henry, the guy that when they kicked out McCarthy, he was so pissed, and he's like banging
slam the gavel down like that. Yeah, that was him. Yeah, he's the speaker pro tem. But so the idea was, well, we'll make him temporary speaker so we can pass things. And it's like, no, once you do that, he's the speaker. There's no question about it. It's complete BS. Yeah. I mean, the reason why they have to do all this stuff too, rather than like in the Senate, they don't have a speaker. They have a minority leader and a majority leader. But it's because the Constitution expressly says the House must have a speaker. So they can't do anything until they have a speaker. So all that was just a bunch of nonsense that they thought some people might fall for. Nobody fell for it. And like, okay, yeah, that's not going to work. So
Lisa Petrona has a comment. It might be speculation, but
I've seen comments on a different page stating, I'm reading Lisa's comment, that they have it from a reliable source that James is holding up because Jordan refused to agree to provide support for Selfridge. Haven't seen him come out publicly on that. May have missed it. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Well, there was an interview with John James just recently. Let me pull it up here. It might take me a second to find my browser tab. Sorry, folks. But John James went on I believe it was Justin Barkley's show. And what he effectively said was, I voted no because Jim Jordan wouldn't promise me more military industrial complex money. Let me see if I can find this clip. Hold on. Sorry also about my throat, guys. It's well, the way things go sometimes. Let's see. John James. Here we go. The Midwesterner. Okay, I found the tab now. Let me just get it on the screen here. Actually, I did not find the tab, but I found the link, so I got it back up anyway. Let's see here. Presenting. Brave tab. Here we go. John James won't support Jim Jordan for speaker because he's open to cutting spending. So here's the story. Explaining his downvote for U.S. Rep. Jim Jordan for Speaker of the House as a response to what he said is Jordan's apparent lack of support for what he calls, and the Midwesterner should have put that in there, what he calls Michigan priorities. So in an interview with Justin Barkley, at James asked Jordan to support one of the appropriations bills on the record, but did not receive it. James said, I asked him to maintain what has already been passed. I've been here for about 9-10 months, and I've been able to get a bill passed. I've been able to get appropriations through. That would boost Michigan's economy and protect our national security. When I asked for his support on the record, he was unable to commit. This is Paul speak for, I got money from my district. I got military industrial complex, money from my district. And James added, if he's willing to commit on the record to not cut defense spending, which Michigan relies on, it provides $31 billion to our economy. It really doesn't, but we'll talk about that in a second. 4,000 businesses rely on defense spending. That's not good enough for Michigan. And I said, I asked him for this. He would not give me his promise. And that's to build additional fighters. We should be a $122 million economic boost in this country. That's not a big economic boost for a country, folks. But maybe there's a typo or something. Neiman billion or something. This is not just selfish. This is also about increased jobs. Well, yeah, every lobbyist special interest deal comes with jobs for the lobbyist company. And here it is right here. I got $15 million in hypersonic testing. This is why the military industrial complex is so broken in this country, because the way they do everything is it's all political. It's all politicians in Washington like John James fighting for contracts, fighting for special interest money to go to their districts. And that's why we have the most overpriced military in the world, because Russia doesn't have these problems. China doesn't have these problems. So the free market's all wonderful, but when you are a monopsony, when you're a business that has one customer, the government, and it's all politically driven, there's no accountability. That's why you get busted military technology that has completely failed on the battlefield. And that's so, like, you get the biggest, most powerful military in the world. Well, yeah, except those are the most expensive military in the world. That's why you have all of our gear, like the M777s and, and the Abrams tanks, and they want to do the F-16s, all of which have huge, huge, huge maintenance commitments that are falling apart. We can't afford it. So we got the most expensive military in the world, that's for sure. And because we don't have any reform, which Jim Jordan might actually be fighting for, John James, I got my $15 million. I want to keep that cash flowing into my district. I want the lobbyist money. I want my constituents getting that money. And then he has this. Here's an interesting quote from John James. We have people on strike in Southeast Michigan because our automotive jobs are going to Mexico and China. That's a faulty cause and effect there, buddy. Our automotive jobs are going to Mexico and China because we have people on strike. That's the way it works. That's been the story of Michigan for the last 50 plus years.
No, that's not true.
Well, it's not all strikes, but yeah, why would it shop on open a new plant?
That fast. No, that's not true. Yeah.
Well, no, it takes decades, but why would an automotive company want to build a factory in Michigan when they can build a factory in a right to work state where they pay lower taxes and they don't have to pay their workers as much?
That's why they went to Tennessee, at least for Ford, probably, and GM. But GM has already given, and they already said that they're going to have their new plant be UAW, and that's Ford is holding out on that for now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's supply and demand. The more expensive the cost of labor, the more the company's going to look for.
Labor is not a big part of the car.
Well, but
it's like 5%. Labor is like 5% of the vehicle cost.
But the jobs that are on strike are the laborers.
Correct, but I'm saying even if you give these people like better wages for what they do, it's still only going to affect like a minimal amount of the cost of the vehicle. There's so much waste everywhere else.
Well,
But they
I'm not saying
try
it's
to
the
pin
only-
it on this. They try to pin it on on the factory workers. But
Well, I'm not saying it's the only issue, but I mean it is supply and demand. And when you have people that say we need a 4-day work week and we need a 40% raise, they're like, okay, well, there's other people that'll do that wouldn't require those things. Anyway, we're getting outside the point here. We're talking about John James here. He wants money, and that's what his argument was. So that's pretty much the whole story. Is Jim Jordan would not promise me that I will still get my money, so I voted to block him as speaker. So there you go, folks. So this Wednesday, John James's district office, 30500 Van Dyke Road in Warren, which is his only district office, interestingly, because the other members of Congress, all in the Michigan delegation, all have multiple district offices, but John James only has one. So anyway, all this is, I think, leads me to have to make a rant, which I've made on this channel before, but not everybody has watched every single stream I've ever done on this channel. Because as I mentioned, John James is in a tough seat. And whenever we go out and start beating up on Republicans for their bad behavior, inevitably the politicians will come back with the biggest lie in politics, which is that we're part of the problem. Because, you see, folks, if we do things like criticizing John James's record that might lead to his defeat next year, we're helping the Democrats. We're helping the Democrats get the majority. And this is a powerful argument. In fact, every year, tons of people, as they call it, hold their noses and vote for what they call the lesser of two evils. And there's a problem with this. There's actually several problems. First off being, and you've all heard this one before, the lesser of two evils is still evil. And that's the argument most people will always make. It's also, in my opinion, the weakest argument against this line of attack, because fundamentally you haven't answered the challenge, which is, well, yeah, but given that there will be evil, I would like to minimize it. Therefore, I'd rather John James than some Democrat. But there's other problems too. The second problem is it demoralizes our people to be told what they must settle for. And if you're in John James's district, which by the way also means you're probably, well, you could be in Mark Tisdale's district or Tom Coon's district, or no, not Tom Coon, but Mark Tisdale's district, and Michael Weber's district. So you've got rhinos in the state house, the state senate, and Congress. Good job, Rochester. How is, she's not on the program tonight, so I don't want to say her by name, but how is the Oakland County GOP going to mobilize volunteers in these districts to get people to knock on doors to do get out the vote programs when their entire Republican representation in state and federal legislatures are rhinos? This is why people come and go in politics year after year after year, because, and I've talked to people this week who donated to John James, who knocked on doors for John James, who had John James t-shirts they sent back to his
people
office.
sent them back.
And when that's how grassroots leaders are lost. That's why people throw up their hands and give up and stop paying attention to politics and turn on sports, because they can't bear the heartbreak. And if we don't take care of our own house and show that we will actually bring punishment for bad behavior, people lose heart. And that is a serious problem. The third problem is you don't ever get to victory by supporting politicians that vote against your agenda. If John James can sabotage Jim Jordan for speaker and go on to vote for endless overseas spending, well, then what are the Republicans going to start thinking? They think, hey, you know what? The Republicans, their vote is mine. I don't need to do anything to get their vote. I can introduce anti-gun legislation, as someone in Rochester did today or earlier this week, Tom Kuhn and Mark Tisdale, actually, Lisa. And by the way, folks, that's the state of the pro-life movement. That's where it's been for decades. They have been a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republican Party, and as a result, they have gotten zero pro-life legislation. As a result, when George W. Bush had both chambers of Congress, when Donald J. Trump had both chambers of Congress, they didn't pass a Life at Conception Act because they didn't need to. Because you know what? They're like, hey, you know what? The pro-lifers, they're our base. So we can run to the left and try to get more voters that way. And last, and I think the most important thing is, it's not true at all. John James is a servant of the Washington establishment, same as all the Democrats are. The difference is, if you have a Democrat, and some of us do have Democrats representing us in seats that might be fought back and won, perhaps even Haley Stevens, although it's slipped away a bit since the redistricting, but that used to be a Republican district. There are seats that Republicans lost. The Democrats who went take those swing seats, they don't run to the right. You had Darren Camilleri win a seat from a Republican when he got elected to the state house. He didn't run as a moderate. He didn't vote as a moderate. He's a complete extremist, and proudly so. And he held his seat. In fact, now he's a state senator. When you allow and condone and apologize for and make excuses for rhinos, you don't have something to push back against. If this seat, if the people of Macomb County and Rochester Hills say the kind of people they are, a Republican, perhaps a better Republican, can win that seat in 2 years later. But if not, John James is going to get entrenched. He's going to start taking more lobbyist money and more lobbyist money and more lobbyist money. And before you know it, you got another Lindsey Graham here in Michigan. Can you imagine being in South Carolina? He's being your U.S. Senator.
Oh,
makes me sick.
And Tim Scott and Nikki Haley, there's something wrong with all.
Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, yeah, they got it worse than Rochester does. So no, folks, do not believe this lesser of two evils garbage. The fact is, the National Republican Campaign Committee, it's their problem. They've got another 212 districts they can play in. And if John James has thrown away his future by alienating his conservative base, then you know what? They can find somewhere else and pick up a seat elsewhere. That's not our problem. I mean, I understand if sometimes for, President of the United States, people, okay, fine, I got to go with the lesser two evils on this one because it's the president. But my God, people use this argument for state reps. That is not our problem. The reason why we have these rhinos is because we don't clean house. The Democrats don't have Democrats voting pro-life in swing districts, voting pro-gun in swing districts. You see that in Lansing? You see Betsy Kofia and Jamie Churches voting no on these extreme bills. We'll look at those in a second. No, because Democrats take care to enforce their ideology, and our side doesn't. So, all right, that's the end of my rant, folks. See you on Wednesday, I hope, 3:00 p.m. Should be exciting. Get a lot of people out there.
See you on Tuesday.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well,
I just heard when you told me before the show, Charlie LaDuff got fired.
Thursday is, if anyone follows Charlie LaDuff, local news guy who now does a podcast. He was exposing Nestle on something else. Apparently, she tried to order some people to stop investigating something in a nursing home because the person running it was her friend or something. And she's also
like her treasurer or something like that.
She's the treasurer of the Michigan Democratic Party too. I mean, she's involved with the party too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Charlie wrote this tweet and then he said something and then he said, "See you next Tuesday." Actually wrote out the words.
Yeah.
And so then everyone's up in arms, whoa, clutching their pearls. And so then people were calling for him to get fired and all this stuff. And then today people were saying he got fired, but then he put out a tweet and said, "That's weird. I thought I resigned." But so I don't know what the truth is.
Fired from, wait, who do you work for?
Detroit News.
Oh, Detroit News. Okay.
And the editor, I mean, he, yep, Betty, I recognize your name from the comments. Pull up Charlie's video from his Twitter account. Yeah. So he, anyway, but so he had a weekly column in the Detroit News. And so, Nessel, wrote this letter saying, oh, all this stuff was wrong, but really, and then, they looked at her letter and all her stuff was wrong. And this, and that editor guy, basically came out and said that, but Charlie's gone anyway. But I think his column comes out on Tuesdays. So really it was kind of like double meaning. See you next Tuesday.
Yeah, it was a double entendre. But I mean, the Detroit News is basically an establishment publication anyway. I'm not surprised.
I guess, yeah. I mean, they stuck up for him when she came after him, so anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is, how do you boycott something you never were paying for in the first place? Like, I'm not going to cancel my Detroit News subscription because I don't have one.
Well, that's who threatened to do it. Noah Arbit.
Yeah.
Noah Arbit threatened to cancel subscription. Chad Levengood was like, this is disgusting. He needs to be fired. All these things. I'm like,
scumbag.
Hey, if the C word fits.
And it absolutely fits on Dana Nessel.
I don't use that word a lot, but man, the few people I've used it on, they've earned it.
Yeah. I got to catch up on some Rumble chats real quick.
Yep.
Charlotte Cosmic says Tom Emmer is Soros backed. I cannot confirm that. Curtis Saber 2004 says, I heard Daryl Issa of California nominated Kerry Bentivolio for speaker. I have not heard that. If you can confirm that, I'd be curious to see that. I used to work for Kerry Bentivolio, and Daryl Issa was, I believe, the chair of the House Oversight Committee on which Kerry Bentivolio served. But if Daryl Issa actually nominated Kerry Bentivolio for speaker, that was an FU to Jim Jordan, is what that was, because Jordan also served in that committee too. And he knows, because Bentivolio only served one term in the House. He was, labeled the accidental congressman, et cetera, et cetera. So doing that would be Daryl Issa's way of, voting for Krusty the Clown or something. It would be an insult to Jim Jordan. So if he did actually say that, that's what that was intended to. That's I don't say that as to disrespect Kerry Bentivolio. I'm saying that's what Daryl Issa would have meant by that, if that's what he actually said. Let's see. Charlotte also says maybe he's fighting for EV tanks. John James. Let's see. Maybe John James can increase the debt to 35 million, says Curtis Saber. And Upon the Horizon says, just tuned in to learn John James is a disappointment. He has a podcast, the No BS News Hour. Look it up, says Jojo Pixie. I haven't seen. Oh, that's Charlie LaDuff.
That's LaDuff's show. Yeah. He's had that for years now on the Red Shovel Network. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's most of the tweets on Rumble. If you're just learning that John James is a disappointment, well, I'm sorry. But this is beyond the pale. I mean, I would not call out for a demonstration for something that, just a bad vote or something, but this is serious. This is one member of the Michigan Republican delegation being among very few who have disrupted the entire agenda of the U.S. House and perhaps defended the entire Washington swamp from Jim Jordan. Inexcusable.
Yeah.
Emma Birch says, did you talk about the MIGOP meeting that happened on Thursday? I didn't. We have not, and I wasn't there. I haven't heard about the MIGOP meeting that happened on Thursday. If you know things, Emma, about it, feel free to put them in the chat. I do want to talk about Christina because I do have a follow-up about that, but something else I want to go to because I always leave these loose ends hanging. Every time we do a show, after the show's over, I'm like, I was making a point, I got in a tangent, and I forgot to go back to my original line of thinking. It happens all the time. But I mentioned Bills and Lansing, so I want to do that first. Then we'll asterisk the thing about Christina Caramo. Anyway, as you guys may have seen in our email blast today, this was a very, 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 very bad week in the Michigan legislature. So I'm going to pull it up here. And that didn't do it. Here we go. Other than that, there were no bills signed into law, but doesn't matter because they're just going to sit until they get there. So let's talk about the new bills. I got to say, I see some pretty bad new bills here in both chambers, including this little thing here from Sylvia Santana to criminalize perception-based criminal threats. So let's look at this one first. Let me open the opinion here, or open the text of the bill. Here we go. There's the sentencing one. Hold on, I'll get the other one. Here we go. This is Senate bill, and it will say that a person is guilty of criminal threatening if that person intentionally or knowingly threatens by word or conduct. And this is deceptive language because against another individual, an unlawful act of violence or damage the property in a manner that would cause a reasonable individual to feel terrorized. Now, keep in mind, the courts are extremely open about what a reasonable individual means. In fact, almost anything imaginable they'll consider reasonable. And as it says, let's see here. Yeah, would cause to feel terrorized, threatened, intimidated, harassed, or fearful. And that actually causes the victim or victims to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated. So if someone goes to the cops and says, I felt intimidated. He kept referring to me as she, but I'm clearly a he. And this guy might be another one of these January 6thers. I was petrified. Well, that sounds reasonable to me, ma'am. Or sir, or whatever it is. That's a crime under this language. There was a bill we looked at similarly, the ethnic intimidation bill earlier this year. This is a catch-all. This is if someone feels intimidated, that's a criminal threat. I mean, this is not remotely constitutional under the First Amendment, but hey, that will just take someone's life being ruined with criminal charges. Which, by the way, you get charged, your life is ruined. So, I mean, you might get acquitted. You're not going to get your attorney's fees back. You're not going to get your reputation back. You're not going to get your name out of the newspaper back. Steve Gothal says, I know where you live. Is that a threat? According to Dana Nessel, it is. In fact, I know someone personally who is serving a sentence for telling someone they know where she lived. That's someone being Dana Nessel, by the way. So, yeah, that's what Dana Nessel believes is a threat. She doesn't really believe that, but she's a sociopath and she likes to put people she doesn't like in prison or jail or, whatever. Just expose them to the legal system, give them a punishment. Remember, the process is the punishment. So you might get this law declared unconstitutional somewhere down the road, but not before lives are ruined. Anyway, by the way, I see the comments in the chat about Christina. We will get to those when we get to that topic. That's just one bill, two bills in the Senate. These are the newest ones. These came in on Thursday. But there are more. Here's a great one. Prohibit legal challenges to the presidential election. Yep. That's what it says, folks. Here we go. Here we have it here.
Hey, Dwayne.
Boom. A person shall not bring an action for quo warranto that relates to the outcome of an election for the electors of president and vice president of the United States. There you go. Their election fraud? Sorry. The Michigan legislature has said we cannot hear that case. Only one sponsor, Mary Kavanaugh, in the Senate. So who knows how far that's going to go, but she's thrown it out there. Along with this one, by the way, there's also another one saying that all election contests must be brought before the Court of Claims. Those judges would be appointed, not elected, by the way. So there you go. Let's see where it says Court of Claims here. An action contesting the certification of an elective for an office described in Section 841(1) must be filed in the Court of Claims. There you go. Can't file with your local court if it's a local clerk that broke the law. Also, by the way, can't file. Criminal charges will have a problem there, but you have to file a contest in civil court. That'll be a lawsuit. But there you go. Just pushing all that jurisdiction into the Court of Claims. So there's that bill. What else have we got this week? We have, here's a lovely one in the House. Let's see here. Oh, Where is it? Oh, here we go. Maybe you guys are thinking that every now and then you hear from the state government they don't have a lot of money laying around. You know, like how are we going to fix the roads if you don't want to raise taxes? Remember when the Republicans were running for governor a few years ago? What in the world are you going to cut in the budget to pay for the roads if you're not going to raise taxes? Well, here is a bill from Kerry Rangens that if a person receives authorization from the department, they may establish a needle and hypodermic syringe access program for the purposes of distributing sterile needles or hypodermic syringes to individuals or providing additional services, items, or equipment to individuals to decrease the spread of communicable diseases. What does that mean? Well, that means a needle, syringe, or drug paraphernalia. What does drug paraphernalia mean? It means everything used to take drugs, including, by the way, crack pipes. Remember that big story a year or two ago? I think it was last year. Tucker Carlson was all over it. How the Biden administration was distributing heroin needles and crack pipes, and the Democrats all freaked out. They're not distributing crack pipes. They were distributing crack pipes, and of course, I never talked about they were also distributing heroin needles. But you know, if you are a compassionate caregiver who wants to make sure that drug users are not getting diseases from their syringes, you know, because sharing syringes is a great way to spread diseases. But you might also think, you know, gosh, you know, I mean, your mouth is full of places to get diseases from, and sharing crack pipes, you know, it's going to spread diseases, especially if people are sharing crack pipes. Wouldn't it be great if wasn't that the whole point of distributing crack pipes in the first place? The more crack pipes people have, the cleaner everybody will be. So as I read it, this bill does not exclude crack pipes at all. I mean, just says any. I mean, needles are expressly included. So for shooting dope, absolutely, they can spend your tax dollars distributing needles to shoot dope with. But actually, these additional services, items, and equipment to individuals, which expressly includes drug paraphernalia, would seem to include crack pipes. So there you go, folks. Kerry Rangens, Felicia Brabeck, Rachel Hood, Natalie Price, Christine Morris, Aaron Burns, Jimmy Wilson Jr., Dylan Wegela, Noah Arbit, Emily Devendorf, Jen Hill, Jason Morgan, and Regina Miller, who last time I checked was in a very swing district in parts of Washtenaw and Wayne counties, among other places, have signed on a bill to distribute heroin needles and crack pipes with your tax dollars. Your tax dollars hard at work, folks.
Mm-hmm.
This may show up in a mailing one of these days. Just saying. But anyway, while the Democrats are doing all this and more, I mean, we could spend the rest of the hour going over what the Democrats put in this week. But as I mentioned in my email, this is also, I think, the first time looking at these bills introduced by Republicans, I can actually say every single bill they've introduced this week is bad. Every single one, with like one minor exception. There was a bill that looks like members of both presidents to allow 17-year-olds to be licensed as EMTs. Okay, I'll let that one go. And then maybe there's some minor distinction about revising disclosure rules for birth records of adoptees. But Kathy Schmaltz signed on, who also is on a bill I'm going to talk about in a second, as a new pilot program. Some lobbyists are going to get some money for that. Not a lot of Democrat or Republican bills in general this week, by the way. Isn't that funny? It's like they've given up the ghost. They just don't, they're not even trying anymore. John Roth, Total Rhino from up north, bill to give taxpayer subsidies to companies for LEED certification. That green energy stuff they do. Oh yeah, perfect. That's what we need. More taxpayer incentives for LEED certification for, you know, for being fuel efficient and all that other good stuff. That's supposed to be an incentive all by itself. We have David Preston. Now, this is funny. You know, usually when I write up the resolutions, I just say, declare an awareness week, declare an awareness month, whatever it is. That's usually all I say. Occasionally something makes me say something else. This is what David Preston put in his resolution. And by the way, folks, you know, with a resolution or even a bill, well, certainly a bill and even a resolution, you always should write it with the intention that this is something I want to be signed into law, adopted, signed by the governor, whatever. Mm-hmm. And Preston put in a resolution to declare the entire city of Ann Arbor a wilderness area. Which, yeah, it's not funny, guys. I mean, it's, you know, I know to some of us it's kind of funny. Those of us who have been to Ann Arbor know what that's all about. But this makes you look unserious as a lawmaker. This was a stupid thing that none of
Angela Regas.
Of all the names on that co-sponsor list, I'm surprised it wasn't her office that wrote it. But yeah, resolution to oppose the designation of additional federal wilderness areas in Michigan's Upper Peninsula and urge the United States Congress to declare the entire city of Ann Arbor a wilderness area. I mean, it's just being snarky for the sake of being snarky. I get it. It's funny. Haha. You shouldn't be telling jokes on the taxpayer's dime. So there's that. Brilliant work. I'm sure that's going to win him votes in the district. And then Tom Albert in the Senate has a package of bills mandating politicians report their personal finances, make them all public records. I know some people like that. I know Jim Runstead likes that kind of stuff, and banning politicians from becoming lobbyists and things like that. I have First Amendment issues with this, and you should not have to surrender your financial privacy just to run for office. This will have unintended consequences.
This was Prop 1.
Yeah, people that might not want to run for office.
That's the intent. That's the intent.
Yeah, to implement Prop 1, all the more reason. I mean, Republicans shouldn't be doing that. Anyway, debatable. You might not agree, but from my perspective, as I look at this, there's not a single thing in here that Republicans have put in this week.
Oh, wait. What did Rosemary Bayer just do? I just saw her name.
Rosemary Bayer. Oh, prohibiting a state lawsuit related to various opioid settlements. This is some kind of way of closing the door on some post-settlement additional litigation, things like that. It's actually referenced in the bill. I saw this. The text of it. Yeah, Allergan settlement means this, CVS settlement means that, master settlement, and this settlement and that settlement, and blah 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 blah. So now the state can't file additional lawsuits about this. I have a problem with putting companies' names into statutes. Personally, it sounds like a bill of attainder, but I guess they can do it. So there you go. And of course, there's also plenty of bad votes, but we'll be here all night if we go over all those, folks. So
yeah, it's 9:52.
We send out these emails every week to give you guys ammunition in your intellectual quiver to go after these people, be they rhinos or Democrats. So there you go. And of course, the usual with the every Democrat, if you got a Democrat challenger or something like that, the record is more or less held. 907 out of 974 votes of the Democrats were unanimous. They all vote the same all the time. So there you go. All right, let's talk about the Christina stuff. I will catch up on the chats on Christina in just a moment. But first, just to give you guys a quick update about this, we talked a lot about the Christina stuff. God, it's been a week and a half, hasn't it? We had those 9 people on. Well, me plus 8 other people.
The sausage
fest. Rude. And Delisle was not a sausage.
Well, I was watching on my phone. I couldn't see that. She didn't have her camera. I couldn't read the name.
What does it matter? Yeah, we had 8, 9.
That guy, that John Smith, was that his name that was on the stream?
Yeah.
He resigned.
Yeah. I neglected to say that. I think they called him the 5th district chair on the show, but you're right. He had resigned, and I did know that, and I'd forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, he had resigned prior to that?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. I didn't know when it happened. Okay.
I think it was a little while ago. I think it was when a lot of district chairs and state committee members resigned, which, by the way, I don't think was a good move. I mean, to me, if you're in an institution and you're a voting member and you have problems with the majority, resigning is not. You're just taking your voice out of it. Don't do that. They're going to put someone else in that might not have your. I don't like it as a tactic, but I guess a lot of people did that. So, what they chose to do. Anyway, so it has been 10 days. 11 days since we did that stream, and it was already all over the internet like days before that. To this date, Christina has still not said one word about what happened. Just pretending like it never happened at all. Just if I let this will just go away. This will just go away. And like so many other things, they don't really go away. They get replaced with next week's scandal. There's always another one. Seems like every week there's something else and something else and something else. Yeah, Randy says I'm sticking it out so I can have a vote. Good for you. That's what
Randy's his profile picture.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I imagine at the conventions coming up in after New Year's, there's gonna be a lot of Fours T-shirts being distributed by various entities around this convention.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the first one to think of it.
We could put checkbox 1, 2, 3, and then.
Yeah. Yeah, Fours Club, Proud Four. There'll be all kinds of people come up with some kind of clever thing for sure. Anyway, Christina is letting this just pretending it never happened, which I think is extraordinarily unethical, inexcusable. I mean, you say something, the media goes, ape shit over, like Charlie LaDuff's comments, and they can't fire you, fine, ignore it. And I understand that's the enemy. You don't need to repeat their garbage. But in this case, first off, there was a data leak, and they did not notify the victims of the data leak. That's inexcusable, period. You can't just pretend that this never happened. So that's the first thing, because their emails are out there, first names are out there, last names out there. There's a reputational harm in not reporting a leak. Because what can happen when the Mackinac conference happens 2 years from now? People are going to like, well, I don't want my data getting out there. You have to assure people steps have been taken. People are being held accountable.
So
processes are being
they had
fixed.
like a shared Google Drive where they were all like to work on this event. So a certain number of people had access to this Google Drive. Is that what happened? And that's where that list was stored?
I mean, it might be that, or it might be that someone who had access to the document posted it on the Google Drive, or put it on Google themselves and just shared the link around. That might have been all that happened. But at the end of the day, I mean, here's question number one. How many people had access to that document? And if it was a ton of people, why did they have access to, why would anyone who didn't absolutely have to have, I mean, this is basic information security. You don't have access to documents unless you need to have access to the documents. Randy says Google Drive that was left completely unprotected. Well, he said, you say that, Randy, I can't confirm that personally, so I don't know. But here's the thing.
Yeah, but I have a Google Drive. You have to give someone access to. Can you have one that's just completely wide open? I don't know.
Yeah, you can have it with you can have it public, and anyone who gets the link can get to it, for example.
Oh.
But
okay.
I mean, what I would imagine would have happened is somebody had access to the file and made that file available to other people.
Thank you, Randy. Hey, Paula. Woo.
Yeah, as Paula says, that's the problem. We don't have any answers to these questions. Yeah. She has not said one word about it, not even to the victims of the data leak. And then the second question is the appending of those numbers, those 1 to 4 scores, which is completely unethical. Because first of all, everyone that went to the Mackinac conference is a Republican Party donor. And if you're labeling your donors that way, you're that is instant resignation. Like, my political mentor would say when he would talk about fundraising, one of the things that's one process is called caging, the processing of the checks that come in. He said, I have fired staff because they would joke about the shaky handwriting of a donor who wrote a $5 check to us. And that's someone who is at the very end of their life and they're losing their ability, their motor skills. And yet they believed in your organization enough to write a $5 check. And someone laughed at that person. He said, I fired that person on the spot. You do not disrespect your donors ever, 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 ever. And someone did this. And this is where Christina's silence is deafening. Because I could imagine the list of Mackinac conference attendees got to somebody somehow, some way, got to a malicious, malevolent third party. They made up that column and put it on there and said it was the MIGOPs. That's at least a plausible scenario. Had Christina denied it and said, we did not put those rankings on there, but she didn't deny it, folks. She didn't deny it. Why would you not deny that? If you had the opportunity to say, this document's not authentic, we never gave anybody a 1 to 4 ranking, wouldn't you want to do that?
Well, what happened at that event at Shelby Gardens or whatever? She didn't say anything there about it? I don't know.
I don't know. Are you reading something in the chat? I didn't even know about the event at Shelby Gardens. Is that the meeting on Thursday?
Whoever mentioned earlier the MIGOP meeting on Thursday, last Thursday, that's what it was. It was at this place called Shelby Gardens.
Okay, it was a state party meeting?
It wasn't a state party meeting. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know what it is.
Speaking or refuting or what? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Kelly says Christina had no plan to make sure voter integrity is aligned for a win in 2024. Well, she's no plan for anything else about that either. Yeah, if anyone in the chat knows what that event on Thursday was, I'm not aware of it. I don't know what transpired, so I can't comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that given all of these things, this to me is well beyond the point where it's time to start, where people can start calling for Christina to resign. Because these are massive ethical breaches. Fred says it was a District 9 meeting. Emma
okay.
says she denied it at Shelby Gardens. She says the document was created by Joel Studebaker, and a malicious actor supposedly added the number column. She actually said this to people in private at Shelby Gardens. Well, at least she said something about it. Who's Joel Studebaker, though? I think it's just like, is that the name in the metadata? That could be a fake name.
That's the name in the metadata of the file, yeah.
Okay, well, that could be real. Maybe not. Is there a Joel Studebaker in the state party that we're aware of? I'm not aware of one.
I don't know, man.
I still would say I don't think I believe her, because there is a certain thing about this document, and I don't want to put it on the screen because I don't want to dox people or anything like that. Oh, he's chief of staff. Well, there you go. Okay.
What's
so why is he is like some kind of he was executive director.
Counsel?
No, executive director. They're different roles.
Okay.
Chief of staff is above executive director, I believe. Yeah, so why wasn't he fired? Christina said it was a volunteer that pretended to be on their side and added their rankings. Joel is a chairperson at the MIGOP. Okay, why did Joel Studebaker allow a volunteer to have access to a sensitive document that includes people's emails on it? I mean, I don't know. I guess I can imagine doing that, but I know people who went to the Mackinac conference. They haven't heard anything from Christina. They've gotten no accountability, no results, nothing. So,
yeah, that's a good point, right? Denying it at some meeting that nobody's at, versus reaching out to the people and giving an explanation
that's not remotely a proper forum for putting out an explanation for a data breach and what appears to be an extremely unethical act. Christina said about the Mackinac conference, at least we didn't lose much money. Boy, at least we didn't lose much money. Didn't have much money. So anyway, so I've sent around, and some people have seen it, language for a possible resolution. I'm going to float this at my county party and see if they want to take this up.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a meeting for a little while, not until next month, but
by then
I'm almost open to having.
By then you might have something new to write about.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe a resolution about John James or something. The biggest issue at the event is Christina trashed the previous MIGOP leadership, called Mackinac in previous years a drunk fest.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't think people party on the island when they get there? Amazing. Anyway, I'm sure Christina's morally pure Christian conference had no drinking whatsoever. It was a teetotalers conference. People are saying the money paid to Jim Caviezel was a loan. Is this now confirmed since the event we had, the stream we had a week and a half ago? Is this new information, or is this just people conflicting? Christina, is Christina confirmed it was a loan? Needs to be repaid to a donor? At any rate, I think Fred is saying, yeah, he said yes. She admitted it was a loan. Wow, that's a lot of money. $110,000 that you thought was in your pocket that actually was not.
Is that the one that was a loan from Jim Kopas's wife?
I don't know. It was the $110,000 loan. Oh, yes.
That's pretty scary.
So the wife of the executive director was the maybe a donation, maybe a loan.
And he's very, very integral in rewriting of the state bylaws, this man.
So now the state party owes.
Did you hear me, Adam?
100. Say it again. I did, but say it again.
This man is very integral in the rewriting and the of the state bylaws.
Wow. Well, shoot, I think my resolution needs to get longer because I only addressed the data breach. But I thought about adding another paragraph saying something like, and there's also this long pattern of scandals and problems with the state party has had, and this is just the latest and probably the biggest one yet. But man, that's even
old
more.
Information. Mark Cornell, what is old information? Mark, could you clarify that statement, please?
Yeah, on our stream a week and a half ago, nobody knew whether it was a loan or a donation. Yeah, get a loan for an actor. Yeah, I mean, think about this, folks. So
The loan is old
the thing
information.
that we thought was a donation, but was actually a loan, was from the wife of the executive director of the state party. So that means the state party owes its executive director's wife $110,000. When the state party asks for your money, that's where it's going. So yeah. So anyway, I will show it. I had written. This is like a week old now, so it's probably outdated. It needs to be.
I mean, that's why Mark's saying it's old news. Sorry, we're old news.
Oh, my resolution is old news.
I don't know. The loan is old news. We don't know that. I mean,
I don't think it's old news. It was news to me.
Yeah.
Last I had heard, Mark, it was not determined whether it was a loan or a gift. Only tonight, I'm getting people saying Christina confirmed it was a loan. So that's not old news to me. And hey, if you got a better source of the news than I do, man, you should start your own stream. Whoops, let me put this on the screen. I'll try to make this bigger. This is what I threw together, which I'm not going to read this word for word, but you guys can watch this in the future and you can just pause the video. But first talking about the whereas is what happened. A document was leaked where there was an appending of these rankings. Clearly this came from the state party because they knew who was going to Mackinac and who wasn't. This has been a serious breach of security. I could add public statement, and this would still be true because private verbal statements are not a statement. And they had an ethical obligation to inform the victims of the breach. The labeling of these volunteers is inexcusable, and striking for the lack of any conceivable reason this would be necessary, and to not even it's in here somewhere is the fact. Yeah, here we go. The total silence on the matter constitutes a tacit omission that the document's labeling indeed originated from within the Michigan Republican Party. Now, some people in the chat tonight are disputing this and saying that it was a malevolent actor who added that. This is what Christina apparently is claiming now. Now, after this has already been put out there, a week and a half later. I mean, this is not timely. This is now I'm responding to what the opposing side is saying in real time. Oh, they're saying that our silence is complicity. Well, let me correct that now by speaking out, since I have to now that someone has pointed these things out. It's too late for this. This was a scandal almost 2 weeks ago now. And all of this is damaging to the Republican Party brand. This impacts every party organization. So I want to ask our county GOP to call for her resignation over this, because I think they should. I think I'm not someone that ordinarily likes to air dirty laundry with party stuff. This is well beyond the threshold of something has to be said. And the party had an obligation to say something, and they didn't. In fact, they moved on like it never happened, which is inexcusable. Doesn't matter what Christina's values are. Doesn't matter if she's on our side against the Rhino establishment. Doesn't matter. These are basic ethical obligations that she failed in, period. If Fred says Joel admitted authoring the document without the loyalty column. Well, now they're all saying this a week and a half after it came out, and after people were pointing this out, like we did on our stream a week and a half ago. A week after that, it took them a little while to war game this all out and get their story straight. And over a full week after we were all talking about this, only then do they start saying, "Yeah, actually, this is a good plausible deniability. Let's go with this." Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's actually what happened. But the fact that they did not issue any timely statement about this at all is absolutely bizarre. Oh, the other thing I would say too about
and how do we know that Joel guy's telling the truth? We don't know.
The other thing I would point out.
I mean, no offense, Fred, but I mean, we don't know.
Yeah. The other thing that might be worthy of investigation, because I noticed a lot of very strange numbers. And if you're looking at potential suspects as to who made up those numbers, there's a lot of questions about who got their scores and why. Because there's a lot of people in the unknown column, people in the yes column, the no column. Like, for example, if I was a Christina hating, never Trump consultant, I would have given Deborah L a score of 1. You know? But Christina or someone else in the party might feel differently. So, I mean, someone could study and analyze that list and the geographic distribution of whose names have numbers and whose names don't. I mean, there's a whole I mean, you know, it'd be tough, but you know, you could analyze that data and come up with some interesting theories about who might have made up those numbers and what someone's motivation might be for giving one person a number and one person a different number. But anyway, all that said, this is a problem of the state party's making, period. That list got out, bad security, no one being held accountable. I mean, that's that, folks. So I don't know if I have anything more to say about that. And we're getting late. I do have, yeah, Fred says, I mean, waste time. Yeah, I agree. I think the facts are in. Christina's got to go. We have been very patient with her for a very long time. And if we're patient much longer, it's going to be election day and Trump's going to lose this state if we don't get someone competent in that seat. Anyway, I want to talk about 2 other things this week.
Smash the like button. Share.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Patty. I'm always very bad about reminding people about that. Yes, please. Please hit that like and oops, that's not where that goes. How about here? Is that good? Yeah, there we go. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. There's one more thing I want to talk about that happened this week. And I hate to go here, but I kind of have to. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. First, on the first thing, let me see. I know I've got a tab with this here someplace. So I'm really going to take a second to try to find it before I just open a new one. And I did not find it. Shoot. I did. Okay. There's been a lot of talk about the conflict in Israel and Gaza for this past few weeks, and a couple of people have been killed recently that I think are worth pointing out. And I don't know if I want to politicize this. In fact, I think I'm going to try very hard not to, other than just to point out that people are dying on both sides here. And I will say this, the topic of this stream was the Neocons strike back. We talked about a lot of that in some different ways here, with John James sabotaging the speaker race, with people like Matt Hall. Oh, I forgot. We missed the whole topic. Let me go back, because there was this other thing. Yes, there was this one other thing we got to go over. Speaking of, that's right. This is what I was talking about losing my train of thought here and getting on a point and then missing it. We're looking at these bad bills the Republicans introduced this week, and I forgot the worst one. And that is, let's see, here we go. We have, where are they? Oh, here we go. House Bill 5152 and 5153 to make it a felony to possess guns for those who are federally banned from owning guns because of misdemeanor domestic violence charges, which, by the way, folks, if you're charged with a federal felony, you can plead guilty to a federal misdemeanor, you're pleading guilty. That's the way that goes. And what misdemeanor domestic violence means is flexible, especially because the Democrats believe that words are violence. The federal law that would ban you from owning a firearm at the federal level is called the Lautenberg Amendment. That's for Frank Lautenberg, hardcore anti-gun senator from New Jersey. But here we have Donnie Steele, Thomas Kuhn, as well as, oops, I meant to click on the bill number, not the representative. Let me go back here. As well as House Minority Leader Matt Hall. And we also have, I did it again. Jesus. All right, I'll try to be faster about this time. 5153, here we go. Mark Tisdale, Kathy Schmaltz, Matt Hall, and Greg Van Workum. Other than Greg Van Workum and maybe Matt Hall, those Tom Kuhn is representing Troy, tough seat. Donnie Steele, Lake Orion, tough seat. Mark Tisdale, Rochester Hills, tough seat. Kathy Schmaltz, Jackson, and parts of Washtenaw County. These are all swing seats. People who should be afraid of losing a big part of their base, but they put in this bill. Here's what it says, in case you don't believe me. What the bill says: a person shall not use, transport, purchase, carry, ship, receive, etc., a gun if they are prohibited under federal law from doing that, from shipping or transporting or possessing in or affecting commerce any firearm or blah blah blah. And this is a 5-year felony, by the way. So if the feds say you can't own a gun, those lawmakers say that it should also be a state crime you can be charged with. The most anti-gun bill I've ever seen a Republican introduce before, by the way. What's going on with this? I have heard an explanation from one of these sponsors, which is along the lines of the Democrats have their own domestic violence misdemeanor gun ban bills in the House and the Senate, which are moving forward, by the way. They're on the weekly wrap-up list. This way, we'll put this in so that they'll do this instead. Which, if that's not completely retarded, I don't know what is. I mean, these are people who think they're playing 3D chess with the Democrats, and they're playing a 6-year-old's game of checkers with this stuff. First of all, the Democrats have no obligation to take any of their bills. What the Democrats are doing? Democrats are forming an AstroTurf organization that can drop mail against these lawmakers in tough seats next year, saying, here's the anti-gun bills that these rhinos introduced. That's what the Democrats are doing. And these people are stupid enough to think this is going to work. Matt Hall is on this. The House Minority Leader, Matt Hall, sponsored both of these bills, which on paper makes them a firm enemy of the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. And by the way, all of these lawmakers are total rhinos. Their voting records are atrocious. All of them are. These aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer. And at best, they're complete idiots. These are the people that really, really, really need your support next year. Anyway, so rhino striking back. As the Democrats are destroying our country, you've got Rick Snyder running the HRCC. You've got Matt Hall running the HRCC as well. Out recruiting rhinos so that they can put more smart people in Lansing for next time. And also the other thing to say about this rhino strike back thing too is Donald Trump got elected on an America First platform that was a direct attack on the neocons and the entire neocon philosophy of people like John McCain and Mitt Romney, people who wanted to spread our money and weapons all over the world, people who are globalists in their nature, who believe in this Pax Americana ideology and don't really care what happens at home. They want to exert America's global dominance. And that's been their agenda. And it always was. And Trump ran against that. And it has been, for the most part, good to see that not a lot of conservatives going along with this stuff regarding Ukraine. Although obviously the rhinos in Washington sure are. That's what they are. And it's pathetic to have seen how they tried to tie themselves in knots, saying, no, it's actually America First to give money to Ukraine because we're getting war with Russia for so cheap. We're just using Ukrainian lives for it. Hold on real quick as a digression because I saw this in the chat. I'm asked, where can I see which bills are coming up in the state legislature each week? It's on your website. Yes, go to the homepage, click on Operation Watchdog, the big banner on the homepage, and then near the menu on that page, it says 7-day report. That's all that's going on in the legislature in the past week. And there's a section within that called bills moving forward. Those are bills that got put on second or third reading in the past week and haven't been voted on yet. That's what's coming up. Not all what's coming up, but those are bills very likely coming up. Anyway, back to my rant here. Since war broke out in Gaza and in Israel, it feels to me like just the roaring back of every neocon impulse. And I understand, folks, what Hamas did was terroristic. It was barbaric. It was brutal. And it's in times like that, also like 9/11, by the way, that people really need to be careful, cautious, deliberative, and act in sense of all the things that are going on in the world, and trying not to start World War III over this, and to resist the urge, the bloodlust for revenge. And it's been incredible to see how much of even some of the pro-Trump news outlets, commentary outlets, people just calling for wipe them off the face of the earth. It's all good for Nikki Haley, who clearly the neocons have settled on for their pick for
yeah, what makes you say that?
There was an article this week. Mike Pence is broke, and DeSantis's numbers are evaporating. You had George Will call on Tim Scott to get out of the race. Nikki Haley's poll numbers have been going up. Tim Scott's have gone nowhere. And in every presidential race, the establishment always has these various trial balloons where they try different candidates. They always have one that they pick. Clearly, they're settling on Nikki Haley, I think. Anyway, so yeah, Mike Pence's campaign is broke. There was a story the other day that says like he's running on fumes, betting it all on Iowa. That's what they always say about the campaign that's about to drop out. He's betting it all on Iowa. Nope, not going to happen. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley's in the mass media every single day. So that's what's going on. Anyway, now to what I want to talk about last. After that long return to an unfollowed thought. Yeah, I mean, see, this is what I'm talking about, Mark. Mark says, Rashida Tlaib needs to be expelled for pushing that hospital lie. Well, you do that, Mark, and what lies will Republicans be expelled for when the Democrats are in charge? I mean, this is the eye for an eye stuff. It's like there's all these comments on Twitter. Students who are protesting Israel need to be expelled. They should be labeled. They should be canceled. And I saw who was it on Twitter? I think it was Ian Miles Chong, who's a prominent Twitterer. He used to write for Breitbart. Says, well, this is the only way that they're going to learn if they get a taste of their own medicine. It's like, well, first of all, they're not necessarily exactly the same parties. And secondly, all you're doing is you're losing the moral high ground. Because now they're going to point at us and say, you want the exact same things that we're calling for. You were whining for years about people being canceled and saying that you support free speech. Now, when other people are exercising free speech you don't like, now you want them to be canceled, et cetera, et cetera. And people will say, oh, freedom from speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. The exact same thing the Democrats were saying too. I mean, that's the problem.
Isn't it that it actually is supposed to mean freedom of consequences? I don't know why they say that.
Well, because there's a legal question and there's a practical question. I'm getting to this person, Fred. Yeah, Jay says taste of their own medicine is being them in elections. Yeah, and when Republicans or conservatives ever do get back into power, they should not want to silence and censor Democrats. They shouldn't want, oh, now that we're in charge, let's cancel all election integrity because now we got our guy or gal for the Secretary of State. We'll got our people running the elections. Now we can steal elections too. No, you can't fight fire with fire. It does not work. You're losing moral high ground. You're exposing yourself to being a hypocrite, and you can't do that. We have to hold ourselves to better standards. Anyway, on that note, this was posted by Congressman Justin Amash. As people might remember as an ever-Trumper, but other than his dislike of Trump, he was actually quite conservative when he was in the House. He was much like Ron Paul, voting no on all the spending all the time. He is, for those who don't know, part Palestinian, I think. Either that or entirely Palestinian. I think partly Palestinian. I don't know if people know this. It's not entirely Muslim. They have a substantial Christian population. And Israel bombed a Greek Orthodox church where a lot of people were killed, including members of his own family.
Be Orthodox, not Greek Orthodox, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I had said Orthodox, but then
yeah, I thought it was,
yeah.
They might have been two, but anyway.
Might be, I'm not sure. These are Christians in Palestine who just got bombs dropped on them. I mean, now, and by the way, and again, I don't want to politicize this, but both sides are killing civilians, and both sides have killed civilians. And one war crime does not erase another. It doesn't. I mean, let me put it this way. Imagine if Russia responded to Ukraine bombing Belgorod, as they have multiple times. They've been bombing the city of Donetsk almost on a daily basis since the war started a year and a half ago. Imagine if Russia said, okay, well, we're going to wipe out anything we consider a military target. Let's destroy the government in Kiev. And if civilians die, oh, too bad. I think the world would think about that. They would not think the same thing they're thinking about what Israel is doing right now.
Oh, it is Greek Orthodox. Yeah, I just looked it up.
Okay. 1,500-year-old church, by the way, folks. It just got destroyed. So that was the one story. And then, of course, there was the other story, which I'm sure people have seen. Detroit synagogue leader, victim of brutal murder at home. Samantha Wall is her name. Shown here in her Dana Nessel shirt. We don't know the facts, obviously. Could have been a random killing. Although people are quick to point out she was a Jewish leader and a prominent one at that. We don't know who this, I mean, as they say, there's no suspects, there's no motive established yet, so who knows, but people might think there might be a motivation behind this. I actually knew this woman, by the way. Sam, as she was known when she was in college. She is only a couple years younger than me, and she went to U of M. I talked to her for something like 30 minutes to an hour one night at my place. And the reason why she met with me was because I had some questions about an affiliation that she had with a secret society on U of M's campus called the Michigama, which is kind of like the Skull and Bones Society of University of Michigan. And we chatted for a while. This is an organization that in the past was extremely prominent at U of M. I mean, it was the elite secret society at U of M. They have several, by the way.
I never heard of it, so.
They used to occupy the entire top floor of the Michigan Union. The entire top floor of the Michigan Union was their office.
I never heard of this.
Their space. Well, what happened about 20 or so years ago was that the radical black organization BAM occupied their top floor place at the top of the Michigan Union for years, and were like parading around all the. They had a bunch of like old like Indian artifacts and stuff. They did a lot of old Indian rituals and stuff. They would do secret societies, always had this kind of crazy stuff. And Sam was, I was very involved in the anti-war movement on campus at the time. This was like 2005. And Sam was very prominently involved in the Israel-Palestine thing, very pro-Israel, a hardcore liberal Democrat. And then the story came out. She was a member of the secret society. Again, for those who don't know, I mean, secret societies, especially the most elite ones at elite colleges, are power structures. Like Skull and Bones at Yale had George W. Bush and John Kerry both as members who were running against each other for president of the United States. This was a society of elites. And the big deal that the band made about it was all the racist imagery they used. And she said, no, she was very much trying to assure me, no, we're just a nice, happy, positive group of people networking for the greater good of the world. You know, that's it. And we went back and forth. We went back and forth for a while. I mean, this is a conversation I had 18 years ago, so I don't remember it very well. But I remember, first of all, not really believing much of anything that she was saying to me. The other thing I remember was her haunting purple eyes, which may have been contacts. I'm sure they were contacts. But yeah, so that was my memory with Sam Wall. Mark says, I met Sam with my work I do at soup kitchens in Detroit. Yeah. Well, I don't know. She did become a somebody, which, by the way, for saying these things, I'm just saying because this is the entirety of my personal history with Sam Wall. And to be clear, nothing I have said is intended to mitigate or excuse or speculate or theorize about the circumstances surrounding her murder. Which again, we don't know who it is. Most likely, probably someone affiliated with Palestine for some reason, but who knows? I mean, there's lots of intrigue. I mean, here she is. She's clearly closely affiliated with a sociopath. That's not a stab at. I'm sorry. That was not intentional. I should not have made a joke about Dana Nessel at this moment. But I do think Dana Nessel does kill puppies for fun. Anyway, the point being, innocent, and I don't know, I would assume, we all have to assume that this is an innocent victim. And no matter what your politics are, and she's as far from mine as can be.
Yeah.
But nobody deserves to be murdered for their political views, political affiliations, or political statements.
They haven't seen anything, what I saw, that would signify it's a hate crime. I saw that tweet like a couple hours ago.
But police never say anything until they have something serious they can go on. So, I mean, we may never know. We may never know.
Who knows? They could brush it under the rug.
This is, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to say. I've never known someone who's been murdered before. So I don't know what to think other than to say that people need to.
4 years old. It's sad. I'm shitty kids or family. You know what I mean? It's sad.
I don't know. But I think people need to take the temperature down. And for those saying, well, but the other side is so violent, that's not an excuse. So, yeah, we all need, if we're going to carry out a political mission. James Morris said the FBI said it wasn't a hate crime. Well, what do they know? You trust the FBI?
Maybe he's being facetious.
Yeah, I don't know. You can't tell with written text, you know. Yeah. Anyway, folks.
It's been an hour and a half.
We are fighting to save our country. We have to be determined towards that goal. Not give into emotions. Not give into theorizing. Not give into speculation. Focus on the goal, which is the policies and the politicians that support them, and who need to be held accountable at the polls. So on that, I guess that's all I got for tonight. If there's anything, Patty, you wanted to talk about, I know we didn't. I don't think there is. It's been a late show. We're an hour and a half in already. So.
No, nothing really. Just get
Mark
out there and get out there and help. Find out.
Mark. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patty.
Oh, I was just gonna say, get out there and help. If there's any city elections going on near where you live, see if they need help making phone calls. To absentee ballot voters. Just get out there and make a difference. These small elections are not won and lost by that many votes, right? So you can really, you can spend 2 hours yelling about John James, or you could call or text how many absentee voters, and you could get a candidate over the finish line. So when you think about how to spend your time, you got to think of the opportunity cost, right? So trade-off.
Yep. All right, guys. That's it for tonight. See you next time. I wouldn't say see you next Tuesday.
Don't know.
I've had to catch myself on our Watchdog Tuesday meetings a few times about that.
Oh, that is on Tuesday. Yeah. Just Mark like Charlie's article comes out on Tuesdays, but
Mark says plug the channel. All right. One more time. Thank you, Mark. Remember, like, share, subscribe,
and donate to Adam.
Donate and to the Wayne 6th.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for all you do for liberty. Until next time. Peace.